Hello. So in my last video, it was about my opinion about what engine is the best. And in my opinion, it's the 302 Ford, which I had spoke about. And I didn't really go into a lot of detail, although I put my opinionated things in there. But the reason this engine is so precious to me is because I haven't seen another engine take the abuse that one of these engines will take. And the main thing I said in my other video was this: don't compare any engines that don't have the same cubic inches within like a 302 radius. And the first thing I get derogatory comments is even some of the Ford motors they want to bring into play. And of course, it's always going to be the precious cam walk-in 350. Well, I've had all these engines, like I said. One of my favorite cars I've had that was number one on my list, believe it or not. You Ford guys have to hold your ears for this, and I'd like to have it back today, was a 69 Chevelle. I have pictures of that car somewhere. And I originally started out with the Fords, and I'll never forget it when I brought that car home and my dad saw that I had a Chevy out in the yard. He said to me, "Why did you do that? You're in for a bunch of trouble." He goes, "They just don't take it." Well, I'd gotten a little bit older in my years, thinking I knew more than my father, thinking, well, that's his opinion. I've had good luck with the Fords, but Chevy can't be that bad because everybody's out there racing them and doing their thing with them. My cousin, he was going pretty fast with them, even though he was always under the hood. I dismissed that, not realizing he had to be, because half the time he was under the hood, he was fixing something that had broke, not just maintenance. So anyway, I pick up the Chevelle, and the first thing that it needs, it had the precious 307 in it. Let's compare that to the 302. Put nitrous on a 307, see how long it lasts. Yep, they won't even last with no nitrous on them. And one of the points I wanted to make in the other video about the 302 is that all these engines are completely the way they were from the 80s and 90s. They've never been rebuilt. The ones we just got from my cousin Richie, they're going in the car, off the ground, the way they are, just like all the other engines we have. This is what I said. I don't care if you're a Chevy guy, a Ford guy, or a Mopar guy. The 302 roller motor is the only engine we've got away with a 30, 40-year-old engine going in off the ground, beating the snot out of it, and going this fast with it. With $50 engines, I mean, whoever defends it defends. That's all I can say. People get butthurt with this stuff. Getting back to my Chevelle, I pulled a blowed up 307 out of it. And I said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm putting a 327 in this thing, because that was one of my favorite engines Chevy made. Yeah, even though they had the cam walk in them, like all of them had back at that time, 67 to 70 was like the worst year for the cam walking back and forth. And I have stories on that. There's so much I could name with this stuff, I'd need 3 hours and I'd lose my mind doing it. What mind I got left. But I will say this. I never seen a Ford motor come to the house with a wiped out cam in it back in the day. My uncle bought a brand new Chevy truck, pulled up to the house, told my father to come out, had a problem with it. My dad walked out and said the cam's wiped out. He said, that's impossible. I just came from the dealer. It's brand new. That's the problem. Took it back to the dealer. Cam was wiped out. Yep, that was number one with the Chevys. So you'll hear about how fast they are. And one thing all Chevy guys have in common is they'll say Chevy was the cheapest thing to build. And that's right. You better build them. Ask how many of these guys that are diehards, how many rods they kicked out. They went to the pink rod. Ooh, the precious pink rod back in the day. Still spit them out. That's right. So anyway, my favorite car, yeah, I'll get back to it eventually, was the Chevelle 69. But the problem I had with my Chevelle was this. Every time it rained, I got a wet lap because that thing leaked like a sieve. Now keep in mind, this was a 69, and I bought this car in about 1980 or 82, somewhere around there. So it wasn't just that one that leaked. I had 4 of these cars, and 172, 269s. I had the other Malibu, it was like a 76 or something like that. Yeah, I had a few of them. There's more Monte Carlos and things like that, but I guess I'm going to stick to the point here. So my best friend at the time was a Chevy guy, and he was so happy when I got that Chevelle. He came over, man, he says, man, I want that car if you ever get rid of it, Terry. And I was like, oh, I just got it. He goes, man, why don't you sell that to me? I said, no. So I put the 327 in it, getting back to that. All happy. Fires up pretty nice, ran pretty good. So I go to work the next day with it, and coming home, once the engine starts losing power, once it just stalls out. I coast off the old road, off to the side, go to turn it over, click, 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 and the engine seized up. So needs another engine. Oil pressure dropped off. Boom, done. That's number one motor that I just purchased, keep in mind. So then I get another engine. Guy has this engine, really nice engine, he tells me, low mileage. So I buy it, put it in the vehicle. That was in there for about maybe 2 or 3 weeks, if that. So then my cousin had an engine out of his race car. I got that, and that kicked out the old head gasket. So that was that. But at least with that engine, I got some races in with the car, and it ran pretty good. And yeah, the motor was no good after that. I found out the block was cracked. So anyway, but it did run decent. And every time I raced somebody with that car, I started feeling the car shake. And like, what is wrong with this thing? So the first time it happened, I pull off the road, wondering what it could be. And I look back and hear my wheels coming off. I'm like, what did I do? Leave the wheel loose on this thing? Nope. I looked down, and I had sheared all the fancy lug nuts off. Every stud was broke, but maybe one. I took the wheel off, and the other one fell off, and I took the wheel off. So I was lucky to make it off the road, both sides. So that happened every time I ran somebody with that car. And I was like, how do I keep up? I had to keep studs with me. Every time I ran somebody, I had to keep putting new studs into this thing. I'm like, this is insane. But see, I got to back up, because that's after I blew the other rear out of the car. Oh yeah. So I put all the motors on it, This is like all in a month. And then the rear, then the transmission. So all with like within a month, I went through all them engines, and the rear, and the transmission blew. So my dad says, "You having fun with that car?" I said, "You're working on it all the time." But he didn't know that I was working on it twice as much as he saw. Because I got embarrassed. I took it to my friend Dave's house. Actually, it's my girl's brother. And started working on it where my dad didn't see me. But I didn't want to hear it. So my friend Kenny, the Chevy guy, came over one day. And he seen me working on one of my Ford cars. And I was pulling the motor out of it. Just changing the motor because I didn't like how the other motor ran. It wasn't fast enough. So I pulled the motor out of it and put it back in. He goes, "Oh, you're changing the motor?" I was like, "Yeah." I said, "It's like the third one." He goes, "I just did the same thing." I said, "Yeah, I know you did." He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "We're just alike, except you're a Ford guy and I'm the Chevy." I said, "But there's one difference, Kenny." He goes, "What? What's that?" I said, "I didn't like how these ran." And they still run. I said, "And they're perfectly fine." I said, "But your motors were all blowed up when you changed yours." He goes, "Yeah, that is true." So, it's like I said. Every time these guys want to talk the Chevy stuff to me, I've had tons of them. And if you really want to see one of our Chevys, we had the little Blazer on there a couple years ago. Adam did. Went to Capitol Raceway with it. Just look it up. You can see that we run Chevrolet too. And guess what? I keep telling you guys in the comments. If you read the comments on my channel, you'll see I just told you guys. The LS engine's being rebuilt as we speak. The 350s apart being rebuilt as we speak. They're being built. The Ford motors, we don't build them. I'm not kidding. People could say that's impossible. The roller engines, we don't do anything except maybe clearance the valve reliefs for a bigger camshaft. That's it. It gets a new oil pump. When we take them apart, we put a new oil pump in it, and a new rear main seal if it needs it, oil pump shaft, and that's it. Oh, a new timing chain most of the time. That's our rebuild on the 302. And I challenge anybody to really do the same thing with any Chevy, a 305 or a 307. I want to see it go 10 seconds on motor with a stock rod, stock pistons, no rebuilds, no tricks to the rods, beaming the rods, no lightening the crank, none of the garbage that people always try to pull and say, "Oh, it's all stock." Because our stuff is legit from the factory stock. 30 years old from back in the 80s and 90s. That's it. And people get butthurt over this stuff, man. I'm telling you, I don't understand why it has to be such a prideful thing. I like all motors. I like anything that's good to me. That little engine in the S10 Blazer, if you put on my son's channel, you'll see it had a nice sound to it. It was a reliable engine. But we played around with that thing quite a bit. The thing is, I don't know if I should really put it out there exactly what we did, but we had 3 different engines in that too. Okay? Take it for what it is. Some guys can work on stuff and they'll swear by it. My grandpa was a Chevrolet man, and the problem with him is that it could blow up and it was still a good vehicle. I'll tell you something, when something blows up with me, I don't care if it's a Ford, a Chevy, or what it is. It's junk. And if I have something that is not a reliable vehicle, it goes down the road. one of the guys in one of my comments said the only thing wrong in that yard is all the Mustangs. All the Mustangs in that yard were running, and they got very little money in them. And same deal, the slowest one in the yard right there probably runs 1250s stock. You guys can tell me all the stuff you want to about this and that, because I know you can make a Chevy run. We've done it. I still do it. I had a 400 in my Fairmont back in the day. Back in the 90s, I put a 400 Chevy in my Fairmont. Because I thought, I wanted a cubic inch engine, and I said, all I have to do is take a 400 Chevy, I'm going to leave it stock bottom end, and I'm going to put a small combustion head on it. Boost the compression up. It was going to be a budget 400. So I messed with the Chevys. I have so many Chevy stories I could tell you. So this is not something that I just say being a biased Ford guy. And I'll tell you what I hate about the Ford 302 more than anything is this. All the bolts around the water pump. Chevy had the best idea with that, the 4 little bolts on the water pump. So I give credit where credit's due. But as far as taking a beating, just beating on something, these are street cars I'm talking about that we're running 9s with. These aren't race cars. This is my son was driving this car to work. He changed the transmission out one day at his job. His boss said, yeah, go ahead, throw it up on the lift. He wanted to put a different transmission in it. And he put an upgraded trans in it. So he did it right there at his job. Drove it to work every day. The green gangster car. So these aren't weekend warriors, race cars. These are everyday drivers, and I'm not trying to convince other people of anything. This is just what works for me. If a 350 Chevy works for you, it works for you. But I can't understand how somebody can jump on somebody's channel and try to argue with you and tell you that their brand's better than yours when you haven't had anything near as fast, probably. Because every time I look somebody up, they usually have nothing. And I do it once in a while. I look somebody up to say, hey, what's this guy got? Usually a bunch of psychedelic pictures hanging on his wall. But in this case, this guy did have a car, Camaro. And Camaro's a nice car. But anyway, this shouldn't even be a fighting thing. This is what works for me. And I will battle this because it works for me. I'm not going, if you had a 350 and you say, hey Terry, I had a 350, that thing went 400,000 miles, man. And it did, and I had the juice on that, and that thing ran for 10 years. That's good. That's good for you. But I'll tell you what, in my first thought, I'm going to think, this guy's not really telling the truth most cases, because I know the motors don't usually do that. That you can do it if you rebuild them, if you put different stuff in them and machine things different. You can't bullcrap this guy right here. I've had too many vehicles. I've had too many engines and know what does what. I know what it takes to do 10 seconds. I seen how hard it was for the people back in my day and how much money they spent on the Chevrolet stuff. You can look at them all you want to and say, wow, that Camaro is fast, that thing flies. They're not stock. And I will say this, the old guys back in the day knew how to take the factory stuff, massage it, and make it work. I'm not talking about that. We haven't beamed the rods and stuff in these engines as we're going this fast with. They're completely out of one car. The one car went 17s or 16s. My son got that to go in the 11s without even bone stock cam, everything. That's documented. That's right on his Facebook from from the time he pulled it out of the other car to where it went in the other car. Yeah. So I'm about to tell you guys that don't want to believe this stuff. And the ones that don't want to believe it, if it's that hard to believe, the harder it is for you to not believe that, means that it makes my point more valid. It's because you've tried it and you can't do it, or you haven't done it. So the ones that don't believe what we do with this 302, that's that bunch of people. And the ones that say the Chevy engine's just as good, you've probably had a little bit better luck. But I'll guarantee you've probably never had the 302. And if you did, and you tried to go fast with it, guess what? You don't like it because you didn't know how to make it run. That's my opinion about that. Somebody asked my son the other day, they said, we saw your dad on YouTube, he was pretty wound up. I get wound up sometimes when I hear nonsense, just like the Mopar guys. We're talking all that garbage, and rather push a Mopar than drive a Ford. And guess what I saw the very next day? Pushing a Mopar off the starting line. Yeah, where it broke the rear. You might need to put a Ford rear in it. That's what we did to my friend's car, his Duster. He had an old Ronnie Sock's car, and we wound up putting a Ford rear in it. And yeah. But anyway, everybody has their opinions. Everybody's entitled to like what they like, but you better have a good reason for liking it. Some people, like I said, you have guys that will blow engines up and they'll keep right on blowing them up, and they won't switch brands, and that's up to them. They want to do that, that's their choice. Just like me. People say, how come I don't run the Cleveland motor? They make more power. That's one of the comments. I'll tell you why. Because they take that much money. You have to do work to them to make them live and to have a decent machine work and stuff done. Stock, they're not that fast. People can think and watch all they want to on YouTube and see how they run and talk about Bob Glidden and all this stuff, but stock, them motors were no faster. Well, I'll put it this way. My friend had the 351 Cleveland in his Mach 1, 300 horsepower. I had a 68 fastback Mustang with a 2-barrel. I beat him off the start with an automatic. I shifted in the second. His car would bang second and go and chirp the tires. Mine would glide in, and right on the shift he would go by me, and we would stay. I would stay right at his fender, his wheel well with my front end. He got me on the shift. But he also had gear in the car. I had a 280 gear with 15-inch tall tires, which probably knocked my gear ratio down to maybe a 240, somewhere in there. Oh yeah, because I went through in second gear the whole quarter. I mean, it wasn't even wound out. You know, if I had the same gear in my car and had a shift kit, I would have mopped them up with a 2-barrel and no headers. I had no headers on it. Stock little 289. Yeah. So this is my theories. This is where I come from with this stuff. I have stories, things that happened back in the day. And I'll tell you the other little thing here. I used to mop my cousin up with the 396 and the 402 with my 289. Yes, I did. So, it's like I say, you're wasting your time trying to change my mind with anything. I've been around with real vehicles, and I've always done it with small motors. And there's really no incentive for me to go with a big block Ford, except that's what I'm doing for the truck, because I had that before back in the 80s, and I'm trying to duplicate that somewhat. And it's a memory type thing, what I'm doing with my truck right now. But that's why the big block's in that. I bet it's no faster than what my 289 was, so. It might be. We'll see. Well, if I ever get it together, we'll see. But anyway, guys, this isn't about a debate. This is about how I feel about the 302 and what I've seen out of it. And I will add this for closing. A lot of guys seen this on the news. There was a male lady that had a 302 and a Mustang. She used it for work, delivering newspapers and mail, everything. It had over a million miles. Over 1 million miles. Never rebuilt. That was on the news, like probably 15 years ago or so. The transmission had an AOD, and she had that rebuilt once, which I would think that would need to be rebuilt 3 times, to be honest with you, because them things, she must have been pretty easy on the gas pedal, because the motors were good, but the transmissions, they didn't last too well, the AODs. See, I'm not biased, I'll tell you the truth. So anyway, I'm going to wrap this up. I usually go around in circles for these videos because I have so much going on up here, and then I don't know what way to go with it. If you're just sitting here talking to me, I could tell you a bunch of stuff. And one thing I won't do is BS anybody just to make myself look right. I'll tell you what I've seen in my lifetime and how it really is. So anyway, I don't know if I mentioned it in the other video, but the little 289 with the 2-barrel also mopped up my other cousin's 440 Mopar. So that that wasn't a very happy situation when he came over and wanted to race me with that. He got a little bit upset with that one too. But little 289 did pretty well for what it was. So anyway, these are the things that Chevelle brought me back to the Fords, basically, and for the racing part of it. Because Ford was the underdog with the heads and stuff. We all know that. You just don't make them run that easy. You got to pull a few tricks of the trade, but you got to know what tricks to pull. And if some guys say they had the Fords and they never ran very well, then you missed the boat on something there. But as you see, you put in the old Green Gangster on my son's channel. That's just one out of 10 cars that's on YouTube. I mean, he never posted the other cars. The Fairmonts and all, same deal. The little black car, stock engine on a little bit of nitrous, 1060s. On a completely stock engine, no head work, no nothing. Great converter in it though. Yeah, there's little things done that we do, but still, you know, just because you say you're using the factory stuff, don't make it bad. So when something, like I said, holds up and it runs good for you, then that's what you stay with. That's what I do. That's why I went back to the 302. Anyway, that's what this video is kind of about. I really don't need any more people trying to prove that their Chevy's better or their Mopar's better, because if it's better for you, that's fine. But the problem is this: usually you never know what somebody has that's able to make it run. And you might have had a Ford and said, I had one 302s that was garbage. Okay, maybe you did, but maybe it was. But how bad did somebody beat it up before you got it? Did they run out of oil? Did they run it hot 15 times? A lot of guys I see do that mistake. They'll judge something and say, oh, I had one of them motors. That thing was junk. It kept lifting head gaskets. Yeah, because somebody ran it hot, lifted a head gasket. Now the head's warped. Now it keeps blowing out head gaskets. Yeah. And now you're going to say the Ford 302 is a junk motor because it has a warped head. Like my head. You'll say, yeah, you do have a warped head, Jerry. You like them 302s like that. That's okay. I'll keep on running them, and I'll keep going fast with them, and I won't have no money in them. That's what I can honestly say. These guys that want to talk this stuff, I want to see them do the same thing with a Chevy engine. There's probably a Chevy boy out there that's maybe put the bottle on. I know one of my friends, he did, but it took a 400 cubic inch engine to do it. He went 1080s with the nitrous, but it was a 400, and it had some upgraded stuff, but it was still basically stock Chevy parts. But he did what we do. He did a few finessing things, and went 1080s in a Chevelle, so that wasn't too bad. No. But you're talking 400 cubic inches to a 302. And that was on the bottle. And our engine went 1070s on the motor, the 302. So, anyway, you can look at it however you want to. That's just my opinion. But I'm happy with them, and I'll stay with them, and you can stay with whatever makes you happy. If you want a 500 horsepower engine, and that's what's good for you, or a 1,000 horsepower engine, and it's a Chevy, Ford, Mopar, whatever, that makes you happy, that's fine. But I'll tell you what, you won't see me do this, though. You won't see me have a 10-second, 500 cubic inch engine that runs tons. That would totally be unacceptable to me, unless it was like a Cadillac engine. When you build something with aluminum heads, it better run the nines. That's how I look at it. I see a lot of these Mopar guys, they got 500 plus cubic inches, and then they say this is that and the other, and another guy's got $10,000 set of cylinder heads on a Ford truck, and then he's, oh, what's this, not a race truck, and it's got a ton of RAM on it, and these guys make up excuses, and then now it's not a race vehicle. Why'd you spend all that money on it? This goes around and around and around. You could debate this stuff and argue with people, but I'll tell you what I got, though. I got the truth here. If anybody wants to hear it, I'll tell you the truth about the stuff that I see, and you'll get that out of me. And I still like the Chevys. We have two right now. And who knows, you might see a Chevy back in one of our Ford vehicles. Never know. Keep watching. I might surprise you. God bless everybody.